Hi, everyone, and welcome to the NancoVerse podcast, where we discuss what's happening in this crazy universe of ours through my lens and my mic. One thing that I'm extremely sure of is the fact that one has to stay curious about what's happening in this world of ours. If we do not stay curious, if we do not ask questions, and if we're apathetic about what's happening in our surroundings, then our surroundings are only gonna get worse. And talking about verse, this is the NancoVerse podcast, and I used the word verse before stupid Mark Zuckerberg took metaverse, but it has nothing to do with the metaverse. NancoVerse is my universe, and we're going to discuss interesting topics of current events. Ho ho ho! I love current events. I love to know what's happening in my surroundings and in this country of ours and in this world of ours, actually. It's actually very important to not just constrict yourselves to staying curious about what's happening in your own country, but also what's happening in the world. But at the same time, our country is so diverse and so just it's just such a crazy country. Like, so many things are happening around us, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint at on one thing that can be of interest. But that's where a newspaper can be so helpful. Thank you, newspapers. I mean, it's a lost art to actually go through a newspaper and understanding what's happening around us. You see old people, sitting down with their newspapers every day in the morning and, just reading them, and we kind of see them as these boring people who read newspapers. But at the same time, I feel a good newspaper can help us in understanding what's happening in our surroundings. And I'm so grateful for having the curiosity and having the understanding to actually being able to read a newspaper properly. I think media literacy is one of the most important aspects of our generation, especially with the advent of social media and the kind of news that we get, this bite sized clickbait sort of information that we get. I think having a little throwback for a newspaper, towards a newspaper, is extremely important. So, in this episode of the NancoVerse podcast, I'm going to be looking at some interesting news items that I found in the Indian Express. It's the 4th of February, Friday. It's the Friday feeling, baby. Woo! So, let's go. Something very interesting about the Ken&Betwa link. Uh, I don't know how many of you guys know about the Ken&Betwa linking project. The government is trying to link two rivers, which is the Ken and the Betwa rivers, and this is in the area in the region of Bundelkhand, which is known for its water scarcity. And on face value, it seems like a very important project where the entire Bundelkhand region can be supplied with water. And sometimes we forget in our city lives or wherever we live that there are places in this country which do have problems, and there are problems when it comes to water scarcity. So the Canon Betwa link is it's a very interesting project. However, there are a lot of concern when it comes to the environmental clearances. So I would want to read J. Mazumdar's write up. It's an investigation by the Indian Express. I really like this about the Indian Express, that they actually go down and try and investigate projects that are being done by the government. And it also talks about the Goa airport, which is another one of those complex situations where they had promised that Goa had promised to the Supreme Court that 10 trees will be planted for every tree cut along or cut, although state is nearly 50% short on overall compensatory afforestation. Anytime they cut down a tree, a tree takes so much time to grow, and they just cut it down because of, I don't know, an airport, which is also important, but trees are also important. So it's a balance. Yeah, so the headline reads, Can Betwa link to new Goa airport to Odisha mine? Odisha mine. Six mega projects ignore green commitments they made. National parks mandated but not declared. Trucks laden with trucks laden with coal choke villages. Imagine your pristine village just being turned into a big coal mine. And this is happening in a lot of places, especially in Orrisa, which is rich with a lot of minerals. It's blessed that it has a lot of resources, but at the same time, when we figure out there are resources, we go down there and screw it up. All right, getting to the article. One of them is the strategic border state of Arunachal, the proposed largest hydel plant in India. The other is the state's border with Assam, currently the largest hydel project under construction. Then there's the proposed new international airport in Goa, a mine in Odisha run by world's largest coal producer, the country's first private mega thermal plant in Chhattisgarh, and finally the flagship river linking project in Madhya Pradesh, which is the Ken&Betwa that I was referring to earlier. These are six mega projects across key sectors cleared between 2004 and 2020. In each, stringent conditions to compensate for the project's high environmental impact have been sidestepped, ignored, or in some cases met only on paper. An investigation of the records by the Indian Express has revealed the result: vast national parks and sanctuaries were mandated but never declared. Saplings were distributed to just about anyone to make up for the loss of natural forest. And coal laden trucks ply through villages, spreading toxic dust as promised alternatives were never put in place. Man, this is so sad. Especially this part where it talks about how saplings were distributed to just about anyone, but we all know that saplings do not. I don't know how, like, I have really tried to grow trees and it's not as easy as one would think. Like, you just take a sapling and put it in the ground and it's just gonna start to grow. It doesn't really, sadly, it doesn't really work like that. Saplings need to be given a lot of attention and a lot of love and care. So, what is happening in Goa, what is happening in Madhya Pradesh and Orrisa and all these places, actually throughout the country, it's actually quite disturbing. And I'm glad that there is some investigation, at least from the journalism side, happening in that side. Going to the Ken Betwa River Link project. Ken Betwa River Link, Madhya Pradesh. In December 2021, the cabinet set an 8-year deadline for completing the 44,605 crore. 44,605 crore. That's a lot of crores, dude. 44,000 crores. 1 crore has 7 zeros. But very interesting. Okay. In December 2021, the cabinet set an 8-year deadline for completing the 44,605 crore project to bring quote unquote surplus water to Bundelkhand and for irrigation, drinking water, flood control, and hydel power. Earlier this week, the budget earmarked rupees 1,400 crore for the same. But work cannot start anytime soon. KBLP's wildlife clearance is sub judice. Its powerhouse needs a fresh environmental clearance, and it has been trying to sidestep a crucial precondition for forest clearance. A final forest clearance is issued only on compliance of the conditions set out in the preliminary stage 1 of forest clearance. A key condition of KBLP Stage 1 forest clearance issued in 2017 requires Madhya Pradesh to compensate for diversion of 60.17 square kilometer forest land by adding an equal parlance of revenue land to the Panna Tiger Reserve. Since 2018, the Ministry of Jal Shakti has repeatedly informed the Environment Ministry that Madhya Pradesh could identify only 42.06 square kilometers, which is missing 18 square kilometers, because they needed to do 60.17 square kilometers, but they have been able to identify only 42.06 square kilometers of revenue land, and that it may consider double of the remaining 18.11 square kilometers, that is 36.22 square kilometers degraded forest land, to meet the 60.17 square kilometer commitment. Bhopal Singh, Director General, National Water Development Agency, under the Jal Shakti Ministry, told the Indian Express that the proposal was still under consideration. Other key forest clearance preconditions, such as declaring 3 sanctuaries as Panna's satellite cores, recounting trees to be cut, revising the project's cost benefit analysis to justify its viability, are still pending. Recounting the trees will be expensive as the project area is very large. We are working on adding the sanctuaries to Panna but there is not much progress yet, said Sunil Agarwal, Additional Principal Chief Conservator of Forest, Land Management, Madhya Pradesh. NWDA's, which is NWDA is National Water Development Agency. NWDA's Singh, however, assured that the government would certainly meet the project deadline. Assurances by the government. Point to note, the Supreme Court is yet to decide on its Central Empowered Committee's 2019 report that sought to thorough studies on the environmental impact of KBLP, which, it said, poses a serious challenge to the very objective of the legislature in enacting wildlife and forest laws. Going to the Debang Multipurpose Project in Arunachal Pradesh. 3000 megawatt Debang Multipurpose Project, Arunachal Pradesh. After rejecting it twice in July 2013 and April 2014, the Environment Ministry's Forest Advisory Committee recommended the project for preliminary approval in September 2014. The project is part of India's Act East policy and key to establishing prior use claim on water resources over China. One of the conditions for the green signal required Arunachal to secure the ecological diversity of the Debang River basin by declaring that the right bank of proposed reservoir as a national park. However, in October 2019, when the Environment Ministry sought an update on this condition, the state's response in January 2020, records show, remained silent on that specific query. And yet, the Environment Ministry granted the final forest clearance to Debang in March 2020. Senior officials in the Arunachal Pradesh Forest Department and the Environment Ministry did not respond to the emails and phone calls from the Indian Express seeking comment. Clearance for Debang was conditional on giving protection to the river basin as a national park. And if that was not feasible, the matter was to be sent back to the FAC, which is the Forest Advisory Committee. The ministry cannot unilaterally decide to condone non compliance and issue final clearance, said conservation biologist Feroz Ahmed, who was an expert member of the FAC that recommended the project in 2004. Now, coming to the 2000 megawatt Lower Subansiri Hydel project, Arunachal Assam border. Subansiri Hydel project, which is on the Arunachal Assam border. For this project, strategic in the race over water resources with China. We have a race going on with China. Trust me, China is really a big economic powerhouse that's taking over so many resources. Brahmaputra enters India through China. They're making so many hydel projects over there. For this project, strategic in the race over water resources with China, a key condition for clearance was laid down by the National Board for Wildlife and reiterated by the Supreme Court in 2004. Protection of reserve forest in the catchment and submergence area by declaring a national park or sanctuary. Central Water Commission reports estimated that area at over 900 square kilometers. That's a lot of area. As the Arunachal Pradesh government dragged its feet, the Environment Ministry in 2007 quantified the area as, quote, not less than 500 square kilometers. But citing local opposition, the state said in 2008 that it could not notify only 168 square kilometers as a sanctuary. The ministry agreed and asked the state to bring the remaining 332 square kilometer reserve forest under the category of conservation reserve, which is essentially a buffer zone. The Supreme Court also accepted the modification in 2009. But records investigated by the Indian Express show that until now only 127 square kilometers in two unconnected patches have been notified as sanctuaries in the Subansiri basin. This is very important. The word unconnected patches is very important because in these areas the animals use this entire area as their own. If we connect if there are two patches which are unconnected, then there's a road or something that goes between them, and we are basically cutting down the house for the wildlife. Subansiri Basin, 49 square kilometer of Ringba Roba in 2013 and 78 square kilometer of the Kamala Reserved Forest in 2015. The conservation reserve has not been marked at all. Top officials in the Arunachal Pradesh Forest Department and the Environment Ministry did not respond to emails and phone calls from the Indian Express seeking comment. The first questionnaire was sent on December 8, 2021. On December 16, 2021, the Environment Ministry wrote to the state asking it to immediately furnish the compliance report of forest clearance conditions pending since 2004. This is a classic fait accompli where you allow projects to work. This is a classic fait accompli where you allow project work to begin on tough conditions which are forgotten soon after. Penal action for non compliance is discouraged to protect big investments. This is extremely sad. Promises are forgotten. It's a it's a phenomena of human beings. We make big promises but we do not keep them, and then we just go on with what we were supposed to do because big investments are apparently extremely important, right? Isn't that important? Or is the environment more important? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Yes. Now coming to the Mopa International Airport, Goa. There's a new airport that's going to be set up in Goa. It's called the Mopa International Airport. The forest clearance for this is again one of the issues. The Supreme Court suspended environmental clearance in 2019 for what it called non-disclosure of vital information on the zero carbon project. It was supposed to be a zero carbon project, which is I think one of the most greenwashing terms that these people use sometimes. Zero carbon project conceived to handle 13 million passengers per year and relieve pressure on Dabolim Airport. While seeking EC, which is environmental clearance, the Goa government had claimed inaccurately, not surprisingly, inaccurately, there were no forests, lakes, ecologically sensitive areas, or rivers within 15 kilometers of the proposed site. That is not even possible in Goa. Goa is one of the most nature dense places. Of course, it was inaccurate. While seeking environmental clearance, the Goa government had claimed inaccurately there were no forests, lakes, ecologically sensitive areas, or rivers within 15 kilometers of the proposed site. The stay was lifted in January 2020 after Goa offered to plant 10 trees for every tree axed at the project site in Mopa. That worked out to 5.5 lakh saplings for 54,676 trees, and the state claims to have achieved over 80% of the target in less than 2 years. But here's the catch. This is gonna get messy. Since the trees felled for the airport were on non forest land, the state did not have to stick to the minimum plot size of 5 hectares while finding land for plantation or notify those plots as forest land. The saplings were instead successfully quote. The saplings were instead successfully distributed among residents, NGOs, and institutions across the state. Recipe for disaster. Or just about anyone to meet the target. We will plant 50,000 saplings at the airport site during landscaping once the work is complete. Of the remaining 5 lakh, already 4.6 lakh saplings have been distributed by the Goa State Biodiversity Board, said Suresh Shanbhuge, Director Civil Aviation, Goa. Few are convinced such piecemeal scattered plantations cannot compensate for the loss of 50,000 trees in a cluster which constituted a natural forest. My god, 50,000 is a lot of trees. I cannot be convinced otherwise. 50,000 trees is a lot of trees. That's almost a big forest. Anyway, who is going to audit the number of saplings actually distributed and their survival rate across thousands of locations? Survival rate of saplings is one of the most important factors to be considered here because saplings do not really grow into trees if they're not taken care of. Distribution of saplings is not enough. And Goa is blessed by such beautiful nature, and for an airport we have to fell 50,000 trees. It's a balance that we need to really think about. Goa State Biodiversity. This is so sad. Goa State Biodiversity Board member Secretary Pradeep Sarmo Kadam said that an undertaking was obtained from every recipient of free saplings, and that the Institute of Wood Services Technology has been engaged to monitor survivability. Okay, that's a good sign, but are they doing their job properly? I hope. IWST director, which is Institute of Wood Services Technology director MP Singh said the success of monitoring would depend on the quality of distribution records. Sources in the institute said Goa is yet to provide coordinates of those micro plantations, often a single plant at one location, spread all over the state. The state, meanwhile, is already 46% short of its overall compensatory afforestation goals. Oh my god. News like this can like really make you think about what's happening in this country. In a state like Goa, which is blessed by so much nature, we are trying to make another airport which will tend for 13 million passengers every day. And if we really try and think about the kind of people that go to Goa, people just want to party, dude. People just want to party in Goa. They want to dirty the beaches. They want to spill garbage everywhere they go, make it dirtier. And we also have to cut about 50,000 trees to make that happen. So why are we even wanting to do something like this? Maybe because of economy, which is very important because people need to feed their families. People need to feed themselves. And I was recently in Goa and spoke to a lot of small businesses over there, and they're really suffering because of the COVID pandemic. But how much of it is important in terms of balancing the environmental clearances and understanding that we really need to make sure that our environment is not screwed, which is happening on a real time basis. And I feel like, these these governmental organizations don't really do their job properly most of the times. Even though I do not want to sound like a skeptic, I do feel like there are a lot of competent people in government who can make things right. But at the same time, when you have to cut an entire forest to make a, an airport, and also give inaccurate information to the Supreme Court telling that there are no lakes, no forests in a 15-kilometer vicinity of the airport site. When things start with a lie, they don't really end up well. So I really hope that Goa is going to be in good hands and this airport comes up, but hopefully doesn't destroy the ecology of Goa on a very large scale. Now, moving on to the Kulda coal mine, Odisha and Tamnar thermal plant, Chhattisgarh. The projects serve national interest in view of the shortage of coal in the country and the resulting power crisis. As some of you might know, that India did have a coal shortage of late, which is quite concerning because most of our electricity is generated by coal, which is sad but true. The projects serve national interest in the view of the shortage of coal in the country and the resulting power crisis. In February 2018, when Mahanadi Coalfields Limited applied for a capacity expansion at its mine in Odisha's Kulda, the Environment Ministry expressed deep concern over the status of statutory compliances before allowing it in national interest for 1 year. There were concerns, but it had to be allowed in national interest because of the coal shortage. The EC environmental clearance was extendable subject to compliance of conditions that barred transportation of coal on roads passing through villages. In December 2018, the compliance report by the ministry's regional office said that compliance road corridors were constructed. This claim was repeated to obtain a 1 year extension of the environmental clearance in March 2019, and then again for an extension by 30 years in January 2020. So from 1 year we went to an extension of 30 years, at least an application. But all this while, trucks carried coal from Kulda through villages to reach Tamnar thermal plant run by Jindal Power Limited in Chhattisgarh. They still do. According to JPL's own submission to the Environment Ministry in 2020, 4,187 tons of coal is transported daily from Kulda to Tamnar in 200 dumpers of 21-ton capacity, requiring 400 daily trips or a truck passing every 3 to 4 minutes, round the clock, through 14 villages with a combined population of over 15,000 as per the census 2011. Officials at MCL and the Ministry Regional Office did not respond to the emails and calls from Indian Express. JPL started sourcing coal for Tamnar from Kulda in 2014. By 2015, Tamnar's environmental clearance was amended twice to allow transportation of coal by road as an interim measure until March 2017, by which time the CCP closed circuit pipe conveyor was to be put in place, which never happened. Subsequently, the Environment Ministry granted another three extensions in 2017, 19, and 2020 to the interim permission quote to the quote interim permission before doing away with the deadline altogether. In May 2020, a Gazette notification required all the thermal plants to transport coal by rail or conveyor. 5 months on, the ministry clarified that coal may be transported by road until infrastructure regarding rail conveyor system was ready. So they wanted to do something, but they never ended up doing it because it never ended up happening. In an email, a JPL spokesperson said that the construction work on a CCPC from Kulda could not be accelerated due to the non availability of dedicated coal linkage. JPL has also planned to develop a dedicated railway siding, pending which JPL will continue transportation of coal by road from Kulda by the Ministry Gazette notification dated 21st May 2020, it said. In multiple representations to various authorities over the years, affected villagers have complained of a spike in respiratory illnesses and contamination of water bodies and cropland, leading to loss of productivity and blackening of vegetables and paddy. In October 2021, asked by the Orrisa High Court to find a time-bound solution, the district collector of Sundargarh wrote, "The stoppage of coal transportation by multi-axe vehicles is not at all considerable." This is extremely sad because we are not really thinking about the villagers over there, those poor villagers who have to face the brunt of 400 daily trips of trucks passing every 3 to 4 minutes. Imagine living in a place where trucks are passing every 3 to 4 minutes carrying this black ash coal through your neighborhood and just completely destroying the entire environment. People are having respiratory illnesses. People are suffering, the crops are suffering. But we are not really thinking about that because we need coal and we need coal for electricity. This is an extremely disturbing disturbing piece of news because in our pursuit of development, in our pursuit of generating more electricity for funding and for creating more electricity, we are really we are destroying the lives of so many villagers that we do not even know of. And these people will always lose because they don't have the power, they don't have the voice to 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 speak to the power, to speak to people who are at the helm of affairs, who make these things happen for them and are destroying the entire ecology. It's a balance that we have to think about. How much of electricity is being wasted on a daily basis by all of us, including me. Sometimes I leave my lights open, like I'll leave the light of my bathroom open and not think about it. But at the same time, I know for a fact that it is important that we preserve electricity and that we switch off as much as we can. And there are big companies that are using more electricity than me, but at the same time, I would want to hold myself accountable for this situation as well. And I want to say a big sorry to all the villagers who are having to face this problem because of a loss of coal, because we are not being very efficient with our electricity generation, and so much of it is still dependent on coal. While we talk about things like net zero and carbon neutrality and all of these things, which are not really happening on ground, but a lot of talk is happening while people are suffering, villagers are suffering, and beautiful pristine areas are being destroyed for generation of coal and transportation of coal. Like we don't really think about that because there are coal plants and then there are places which have the coal, so it has to move from that to the other place. And these rail lines have never been created because difficult. These things are not as easy as we think they are. And yeah, maybe the government is trying their best to make sure that there is no coal crisis, there's no coal shortage, because if there is one, then we are all screwed. Imagine living without electricity. Yeah, but it's a catch 22 situation, and I hope that there is a resolution for the villagers soon enough. Balancing out the critique of the government, I would like to speak about Nitin Gadkari. Something very interesting in the newspaper talks about a green cause in the Delhi Confidential. Green cause. Nitin Gadkari, who has earned praise from fellow party men as well as MPs from other parties for the pace in highway construction, now appears to be keen on championing green initiatives. The union minister, who has taken initiatives in production of biofuel and organic farming, makes it a point to show to visitors a a room heater that runs on ethanol at his residence in the national capital. The fireplace burner, which looks like a gas burner, is kept in the visitor's room. According to Gadkari, it produces no carbon and works for 6 to 7 hours with 1 liter of bioethanol. The heater produces no carbon, and he argues that it would be necessary to adopt such items as the nation is moving towards zero emissions and cheaper sources of energy. This is interesting. Bioethanol is actually a very, very interesting source of fuel that we can produce as a nation. I was speaking to Lieutenant Colonel Moni Shahuja on the podcast earlier, and he was telling me how there is a massive problem when it comes to the agricultural bio waste in our country. 500 million metric tons of agricultural bio waste is produced in this country every year, and somewhere around less than 4 million metric tons is being converted into bioethanol by second generation production of ethanol, which is quite fascinating because it's a big problem statement that is being addressed by a few state run companies and by a few private companies like his, which is Prespil, which is short for Punjab Renewable Energy Service Limited. But the production of bioethanol is extremely important so that we don't burn all this agricultural bio waste, and also we create clean fuel, which can help our country in reaching our net zero emissions, and moving away from coal, which is becoming such a big issue for so many villagers in places like Kulda coal mine, Odisha, and Chhattisgarh. Now, moving on to a really interesting development from the economic side, the digital rupee. Yes, now we just don't have the paper, we also have a digital rupee. Damn. 2016 was the year when UPI was introduced in this country, and that has been quite a game changer. And now we have the digital rupee. I really don't know what it means, but at the same time, I do have an understanding that they're going to use blockchain technology to roll this out. How we have Bitcoin and we have Ethereum. The RBI wants to start a digital rupee. And I don't really know if it's going to be traded the same way or not, but it's a very interesting topic. So I'd want to read something about this. The digital rupee. RBI must proceed cautiously, remaining mindful of design considerations, wider implications, and challenges. In the Union Budget 2022-23, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman proposed the introduction of a digital currency to be issued by the RBI in the coming financial year. The announcement follows reports of central bank officials informing the Central Board of the RBI of a pilot project for the introduction of a central bank digital currency. Abbreviation could be CBDC, CBD, oh damn, CBD, yeah. Central bank digital currency. Some countries have already introduced a digital currency. More and more central banks across the world are beginning to explore the viability, usefulness, and value of digital currencies. Countries like Japan, China, Singapore, Sweden are currently examining the various facets of such a transition. A few days ago, the US Federal Reserve also released a report outlining the costs and benefits of issuing a central bank backed digital dollar. CBDCs are essentially fiat currencies issued in the virtual electronic form. Their appeal or the interest in issuing them has gained traction with the rapid surge of cryptocurrencies, the increasing popularity of blockchain technology, and the benefits that are that and the benefits that many argue stem from its adoption. Among the likely benefits claimed by advocates of CBDCs are the acceleration of financial inclusions, lower costs for financial transactions, especially in the case of cross-border transactions, the advantage of an alternate payments system, the creation of another instrument in the monetary policy arsenal or central banks, the likely adverse impacts on corruption and money laundering, among others. However, to what extent these benefits actually materialize will vary from country to country depending on its specific economic scenario. On the flip side, though, there are several possible risks associated with the introduction of CDBCs. In the case that retail in the case that retail CBDCs accounts are interest pairings, there are obviously implications for the banking system. It is also possible that during periods of extreme uncertainty, depositors may choose to migrate away from commercial banks, causing financial upheaval. Then there is also the question of whether CBDCs will offer the same degree of anonymity as cash does. Recently, RBI Deputy Governor T. Ravi Shankar has said that the central bank is working towards a phased implementation strategy and will examine the CBDCs in the wholesale and retail segments. However, as several economists have pointed out, while some benefits may accrue at the wholesale level, the real transformation and the challenge as well lies at the retail level. Considering the wider economic implications, the central bank the central bank must carefully weigh the pros and cons. It must proceed cautiously, remaining mindful of the various issues, the design considerations, and the implications surrounding the introduction of digital currency. Digital currency. This is quite interesting. I really don't know if a lot was explained in this article, but at the same time, I'm quite curious to see how a digital rupee would look like. If they do roll this out, I think I would be investing some in it. Have you guys been investing in cryptocurrencies? I would love to know something more about that. And at the same time, a digital rupee sounds like an idea by the government. UPI has been quite a success. I have lived many days without cash thanks to UPI. No matter where I go, people have started using the QR codes to accept payments, and that's actually a very welcome sign. So, before I end this episode of the NancoVerse podcast, I would want to point out something extremely interesting that I found on the internet, which is which is an initiative by NCERT, which is National Central Education Research. What is T? NCERT. I should know this, man. We, as Indian kids, we've been having NCERT books, or we've been reading NCERT books all our lives. NCERT is the National Council of Educational Research and Training. Damn son. So NCERT has come out with an initiative called PME Vidya, which is one class, one channel. It presents the best curriculum based e contents by experienced teachers to the doorsteps of children on a 24 hours basis. One class, one TV channel for grades 1 to 12. On channel 1 to 10, 2.5 hours of fresh slot with 9 times repeat is transmitted. I don't know what that means. 2.5 hours fresh slot with 9 times repeat is transmitted. Okay. On channel 11 to 12, 3 hours fresh slot with 7 times repeat is transmitted. Programs are telecast in Hindi, English, and Indian Sign Languages. This is really quite nice to read. Indian Sign Languages are also telecasted. A lot of people do need sign languages to be implemented on a larger scale because there are people with disabilities which uh, benefit a lot from sign language. New programs telecast daily are aligned with the academic calendar of school. Live interactive sessions are arranged for clarification of doubts. All QR code videos can be accessed simultaneously by using Diksha app. Diksha app is also another really beautiful app if you want to get educated on the NCRT syllabus. Radio programs are broadcast podcasts through 230 radio stations. These channels are also available on DD Free Dish, Dish TV, and GeoTV app. GeoTV is taking over, man. Nice. All right, this has been quite interesting. The world is full of interesting news, and I would love to read more of this for you guys. I would want to know your thoughts in the comment section. And if you guys could hit the subscribe button, that would be a big enabler for me to keep doing more of these episodes. And I really, really hope that this episode has been of some value to all you listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I would come back to you guys soon with another episode of the NancoVerse. So stay tuned, stay healthy, stay vibrant, and keep drinking your water and smile as much as you can. And I just want to say I love everybody who loves themselves, and I love everybody who does not. Peace out.